We assumed in this example that capacity is 100%. If, in fact, capacity, if the organization was only at 75%, what this analysis tells you is the capacity revenues. Capacity revenues is taking your actual revenues divided by the percent of capacity. So our actual revenues are $2 million in 2010, and we know we're at 75% capacity. So what is that 2667? If you had been at, that's right. So because the revenues are forecasted only to be 2,500, which is less than 267, so what that means is that you could get up to $2,667,000 in patient revenue without adding new capacity. In 2011, we're predicting $2.5 million, so in fact, we could get to that $2.5 million without any additional capacity. That will affect the external financing requirement. How will it affect it? Well, the projected increase was 125,000, so we would decline that. Of the 179, 125 of it was a projected increase in fixed assets. So in fact, if we are at less than 100% capacity, at 75% capacity, the only external financing requirement we need is the 54,000 for the non-fixed assets, the current assets. Does everybody understand that? So we've got a plant that is not fully utilized. We're going to grow the business 25%. We do not need to add any plant and equipment because we're at less than 100% capacity, but we will need to finance the current assets, the inventories, the current asset, the accounts receivable, and so on. So that we would reduce the external financing capacity from the 179 to the 54 after doing that. If revenues went up to 3 million instead of 2.5 million, essentially that tells us then we do have to add physical fixed assets because our projected revenues are greater than our capacity revenues. And so then we would have to add an extra $62.4 million if we use the 18.75% as sort of the average of fixed asset to revenue number. We multiply that to the $3 million, and the difference between the $3 million is the 333 of revenues. So times the 18% gives us an extra $62,000. So in essence, we would have to add that 179,000 that we found. We would then add 62,000 of that to the 179 because now we need an increase in the fixed assets as well as the current assets. So the problems with the constant growth approach is, first is that it may be a result of pricing rather than volume changes. What does that mean?
I have a question on the previous slide. On 21, the slide before that.
21 or 22?
Yeah, that one. So that difference between 2,667 and 2,500, do we consider that excess over what we forecasted to be like available for us to use rather than financing?
Yes, it's what it means is, on our best guess is we think we're going to have revenues of 2.5 million next year. We have the physical assets to handle up to $2.667 million in patient volume, patient revenue. So we're still going to have excess capacity. But to go from where we are now to the $2.5 million, we do not need to add any additional fixed assets. So if we're a 100-bed hospital and we've got an average length of stay, I have to do all the arithmetic. We've got 60,000 patient days. We want to go to 70,000 patient days. If we've got an occupancy rate of 50%, we can absorb that increase in volume without adding another nursing unit, without adding any more beds. Does that add?
And then on the next slide, when you talk about the 179 minus the 125.
Right. That's because in our original example, we assumed 100% capacity. And that's just as a starting point. Other questions about this? Economies of scale. What does that mean? Well, if you've got, sorry.
The constant growth, say if you were to increase the amount of inventory that you need, hypothetically, if you were to buy in larger quantities, you might be able to get a discount per item.
That's a great example. So up to 50,000 IV vials, you get a certain amount per $1 per vial. If you buy 100,000, you get 80 cents per vial. They're volume discounts. That's an example in economies of scale. Lumpy assets. What is a lumpy asset? Aside from having a very kind of disgusting description.
Like something like we needed to buy one more bed in the hospital. You might not be able to just purchase one from a vendor. You'd have to buy, they might require a minimum of 5.
Right. So let's extend, that's a good example. So let's extend the example. Typically nursing units have got 20, 15, 20, 25 beds in them. You very seldom will a hospital add one bed at a time. They have to typically add the whole nursing unit. So you have to wait till your volume gets up to such an extent, then you open a new nursing unit, because it's very costly to add individual beds because there are because of the physical the needs of the way the units are set out. So a lumpy asset might be an example. A nursing unit might be an example of a lumpy asset, where if your patient volume will grow to a certain point. You can no longer handle that volume with your current configuration of beds. You open a new nursing unit. So you have all these new costs at the same time, and that is not a linear relationship like the financial forecasting models assume. And then suboptimal relationships may exist. It's taking, you're putting in a lot of data into these forecasting models, but it's assuming that those relationships are good ones. They are the existing ones, but they may not be the best ones. Another part of forecasting is using regression analysis. You can use Excel as extremely user-friendly with this kind of analysis, and it's just a simple example. You can use the revenue from the last 3-4 years. You know what your inventory levels are, so if you want to predict what inventory level you're going to have at the end of 2011, you can simply use the forecast function in Excel, and you just highlight those cells, and it will come up with 193. So it does the entire regression equation for you in one nice, easy-to-do function, forecast. You'll get different results, regression and constant growth forecast. Constant growth, again, will have different estimates because it's an iterative process where you're calculating the interest and the debt, the external financing requirement iteratively. The regression line approach is a linear relationship, so sometimes you will get different approaches, different answers depending on the approach that you use. Okay, I think the more interesting part of this topic is the cash management tool, cash budgeting, which is an extremely practical tool. Sorry, do you? And I'll show you one that's a real live one in a few minutes. But essentially, what we want to do when we're constructing a cash budget, and in proper cash management, is we're forecasting all the cash inflows and all the cash outflows. And these are not allocated costs, they're not overhead costs, they're not accounting costs, these are actual cash flows in and out of your bank account. So why is it important to know that? Why? Because why, sorry? And that's not an unrealistic extension. I don't know if any of you were around a few years ago in Durham when there was a nursing home that essentially all the employees in the nursing home went to cash their checks on a Friday and they all bounced because the nursing home did not have enough money in its bank account to pay the checks of the workers. And that nursing home never recovered. I mean, it went bankrupt because it sends a signal to the community, it sends a signal to the staff, it sends a signal to the patient, the residents, that this place is not well managed from a financial perspective. So cash budgets are really important because you always want to make sure you have enough cash on hand to pay your bills. You don't want too much cash, but you have to know what kind of cash need you're going to have, and to make allowances for loan needs if you find that in particular days or weeks or months you're going to be falling short. UNC Healthcare takes in and disperses $10 million a day. That's a lot of cash a day. So they would be doing daily cash budgets because the amount of money involved is so big. The organization, Piedmont, that I'm the treasurer of, we do a weekly cash budget because we're only about $40 million in revenue. Ma and Pa physician group practice probably does a monthly cash budget. So the frequency and the amount of attention and detail that goes into a cash budget really depends on the scale and the complexity of the organization. Large academic medical centers, large health systems will all do daily cash budgets. Medium size will do weekly, small will do monthly.